Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 3 Episode 13. It's called Syzygy, or Syzygy. I don't even think they said it in the episode. If they did, I didn't catch it. But spoilers for the episode, as always. This one sounded quite crazy on paper when I read the description last time, and it even felt like it was going to do some stuff that felt similar to the last episode. So I suppose, first things first, it didn't feel similar to the last episode, other than just it being a little bit crazy in a lot of ways, but it didn't feel samey, right, which is maybe a little concern I had going in, so that's good. And one of the things that made me feel like it might feel a bit samey was the part in the description that mentioned that Scully was going to get jealous of a local female detective that Mulder was going to be, I don't know, flirting with or whatever. And we kind of did like a flirty and Scully rolling her eyes, being a little bit jealous last episode. It was very different in this case though, because this episode everyone's acting out a character. In fact, one of the big plot elements that wasn't really hinted at in that description is that everyone seems to be getting more, I don't know, just kind of feisty and agitated. Like, even as soon as Mulder and Scully are arriving in the town, they're kind of snipping at each other about the directions, about where to drive. And very quickly, I was kind of feeling, oh, this isn't really jealousy. Mulder's just being a dick, and Scully's rightfully pissed off because Mulder keeps coming in when they're talking to the local sheriff. What was her name? Angela. They're talking to Angela, and Mulder like multiple times like steps in front and says, "Oh, if you detect some skepticism in Scully's voice, it's because of this," and basically he keeps apologizing for Scully in front of her. It's like really dickish behavior. So I'm like, oh, this is less jealousy and more like just rightfully being pissed off at Mulder. But then Scully started talking like a teenager, where she'd be like, fine, whatever, in a way that felt really out of character, right? You know, as much as like, yeah, it was obviously heightened last episode and it was kind of funny, but it was funny because it felt like they were still being their characters and there was a little bit of like pettiness coming out in her voice in a way that felt more real. This was clearly like, no, she is acting out of character, intentionally so, and Mulder, as things go on, acts a bit more out of character as well. It's less recognizable in him though, and maybe that just says something about how he is generally, but Scully was definitely feeling out of character pretty early on in this one, and kept going. What's so weird about this episode is that it feels like there's two plots going on, which are kind of connected, but it doesn't really feel that connected outside of the explanation for why everything's happening at the end. And what I mean by that is the A plot, I'll call it, is the fact that teenagers in this small town are turning up dead, and the local townsfolk believe that a satanic cult is responsible for it. And this plot revolves almost entirely around these two teenage girls named, was it Terry and Margie, who are kind of doing a bit of a sort of the craft, we're murdering teenage boys kind of thing. So it's not a cult, it's really just these two girls, and that's pretty clear early on. The cold open kind of builds up to all that. So that's one plot going on, and the investigation of all these people dying and what's responsible for it. But then the other plot is this thing that I was kind of getting at before with Mulder and Scully, is that everyone seems to be acting more and more out of character, and you can kind of tell that it's not just them, that even people in the town that we don't know are acting more riled up. They're starting to be affected by something. And then the answer to it all ends up being astrology, which was a bit of a, like, okay, sure, we'll say it's astrology. It's hard to take that seriously in a lot of ways, just because I inherently think it's a bit of a dumb thing. So it kind of like doing this like, oh, but what if, you know, these three planets are in alignment, so it's causing all these problems, especially if you were born on this day, and especially if you were born on this day in 1979, like the two teenage girls in this episode. So I don't know, like that ended up being kind of what it all was, but not to gloss over some of the details, and also not to suggest that I didn't have a pretty good time for the most part, because I didn't have as much fun as last week's episode. I kind of went in expecting a similar kind of type of crazy, and at times I was definitely enjoying the crazy. I was enjoying some of the weirdness, and I definitely was enjoying kind of the evil teen girls like target people in class, and they kept saying weird things that rhymed, like hate him, wouldn't want to date him, and things like that. And I was enjoying kind of that kind of pulpy teen evil goth kind of thing they had going on. But let's talk about the opening scene, the cold open, which after a few seconds I realized, oh, I'm looking at young Ryan Reynolds. So that's first thing, Ryan Reynolds is in this episode. But he's given a eulogy of some kind. They're out with candles, and he's talking about his friend who died already, and he's tearing up, he's crying. And afterwards, these two girls go up to him, the Margie and Terry pair, and basically ask him if he's okay, and say, hey, you know, like, you don't have to be alone or something, whatever. But he ends up giving them a lift home. But while they're in the car, they're in the truck, driving home, and they just start talking about the satanic cult, right? Everyone believes the satanic cult's involved, and they're like, oh, we think we've heard like who they're going after next. They're going after a blonde virgin. And they're kind of eyeing each other, and they're looking over at him, and they're basically discussing like, oh, mom keeps telling me to, you know, not do that until I'm married, but then cults want to kill you for it. Like, maybe we just shouldn't be virgins. And they ask Ryan Reynolds, who still get tears running down his cheek, might I add. They say, hey, are you a virgin? And he says no. It's like, well, maybe we wouldn't be as scared if we weren't virgins anymore. And they sort of look at him, and I started laughing, because this was, I feel like this is something that if it was done more seriously, right? If this wasn't them being evil and luring them into a trap, which it absolutely is. This is like two girls saying, hey, will you please have sex with us so that the cult won't come and get us for being virgins, is like the two, like, too good to be true, like, thing of the world, right? It's like the most too good. I can't even finish this goddamn sentence. It's so ridiculous. It's too good to be true, right? Is the point I'm getting at. But it also feels like something that like a dumb 14, 15-year-old boy would write as fan fiction of like, oh, well, I'll do it to save your lives kind of thing. I get to have sex. Right? That's what it was making me think of. But it was making me laugh, right? It was silly. It was making me laugh. I can't complain. I was entertained. And then the dark ending to this, of course, is that they never make it home after they drive off the road, which in the moment I think is like, he's taking them into the woods so they could all have a threesome, so they can't be virgins anymore. But they find him hanging from like a cliff the next morning, and the two girls are up the top of the cliff just laughing about it and saying, he loves me not, pulling out the petals. And it's like, okay, they're the evil villains, they're the enemy of the episode, cool, we've set things up. But then obviously things start progressing, and we get like all the other stuff with people acting out of character and getting more railed up, and the astrologist ends up being the one who has all the answers, and you know, honestly, the explanation for everything is kind of the weirdest, lamest thing of the episode. And I would have liked Mulder and Scully to get away from the town at the end and actually kind of like reflect on how they'd been acting. I was kind of disappointed that it ended with them just driving out and having one last bit of bickering in the car. I really would have liked them to like, hey, we were acting like complete dicks back there. You know, what's with that? It would have been nice to have like the kind of the post-mortem from them, and like maybe addressing like, did any of those feelings come from anywhere real? You know, was that like a heightened version of some of these little pet peeves we have of each other, or is the jealousy something that's maybe brewing because, hey, we actually do have some kind of a connection and I'm scared about that? And maybe you could say that because of what happened last episode with Scully getting jealous of Mulder being clearly very attracted to another woman, maybe you could say that that was planting seeding for how she instantly feels in this episode. I think that's maybe being a bit generous, but I could hear the argument for it. But I would have liked a little bit of them kind of at least acknowledging, oh, we were acting like complete assholes. How do we address some of this after the fact? It just kind of ends before that point, but you assume everything will be fine next episode, so it's, you know, it's whatever. I would have liked a little bit of reflection on their behavior at the end. But yeah, the whole girls thing, like they kill different teenage boys. Also, at the funeral for Ryan Reynolds, the coffin bursts into flames. And that's kind of like, you know, because Scully keeps saying, oh, and almost every single example of a town believing a cult's behind something, there's never any evidence to suggest that. And it's like she's saying that just at the funeral, right before the coffin bursts into flames. And she reiterates it a few times throughout the episode. One of the big things, actually, is that when they investigate Ryan Reynolds' body in the coffin after the spontaneous combustion seems to happen, is that both Mulder and what's her name, Angela, the local cop, they both say they can see some kind of like goat or some kind of like, you know, evil horned beast as a burn mark on his skin, and Scully says she can't see it. Now, I think it's pretty clear that it's there. We can see it as the audience. I could see what they were talking about. It's not like that's so vague that like they sound crazy when they're saying this. What got me though is that very quickly it cuts to like the local high school and like the basketball team are practicing or whatever, and the big symbol on the court is a goat and a circle, and I was like, surely the local sheriff could have maybe suggested that that looks a little bit like the local high school team's logo, their mascot. Perhaps what's burned into his skin here isn't something satanic per se. Obviously, goats are often linked with Satan, but more just the idea that maybe he was wearing something that had that symbol on it, and the way that the burns like went into his chest is kind of engraved that into him. Like there was actually kind of a reasonable explanation for why there was a goat burned into his skin, but no one brought it up. So I thought I'd mention that. Also, this episode reminded me that American high school gyms have those like bleachers that retract against the wall, because that ends up being how they kill one of the other guys. Like they get really pissed off at this one teenager who trips onto their little drink stand and it spills drinks all over them. So they immediately just like use their powers, their telekinetic fancy powers, to like turn the lights out and then crush them under the bleachers. I think I have seen those retract once before, maybe in a horror movie or something. I can't remember when it was. But this is only the second time I've been reminded, though, that that's a thing, that those actually go back into the wall. Because that's not something I've ever seen. I mean, not that I was at that many UK high schools. I was at one, but certainly nothing we had in our building. It feels like a distinctly American thing. Fun way to kill someone, though. I know that sounds like a weird sentence to say, but in a movie or whatever, it's a fun way to kill someone. It's a interesting, sort of, hearing them scream, crushing with all the beams and whatnot against the thing. And Scully's immediately questioning like the local sheriff's abilities to investigate anything, because she interviewed these two girls together rather than separately to see if their stories line up. I thought one of the big things they were going to say about it, because they interview them separately and their stories match up perfectly, I actually thought Scully was going to maybe suggest there's something fishy about the fact that they're almost word for word the same. That's actually maybe more suspicious than if there was a little bit of discrepancy, because, natural forgetting things, or maybe some details don't occur to some one person versus the other, that kind of thing. But they never actually argue that point, so I guess that is what it is. But that was something I was thinking about as they were talking about that. Yeah, and Mulder and Scully keep getting more and more a character regardless of whatever. Like, she's smoking suddenly in one scene, which is something we've never seen her do. Mulder's drinking booze, and we rarely ever see him do that. The same movies on every TV channel. And this is all sort of happening whilst the angry mob is starting to rile up, and they're digging for the unmarked gravesite, and you see how the hysteria kind of like whips them up into a frenzy, where they find a bag and there's bones in the bag, and they immediately assume that it's a child, and then when they see the initials, they immediately assume, oh, that's the local pediatrician. He must be the killer. Let's go get him. And you can just see Scully holding the bag, like rolling her eyes almost, like, we have not assessed any of this. And frankly, it was pretty obvious to me the second she opened the bag, before they even say anything, that it was clearly a dog's skull. It was not a human skull that was inside this thing. So, and that's fine. Like, that's not a critique, because like the whole point is that they're jumping to conclusions. That's the entire point of the plot, so that's fine. But it almost frustrated me that Scully wasn't instantly shouting out, "No, it's a dog, you idiots," because it was very obvious to me that it was a dog, and Scully's the one that should be instantly noticing that, especially since she actually has a medical degree. But yes, so that's going on. Yeah. I mean, line of the episode has to be when Mulder and Scully are supposed to be at their motels. Mulder instead goes to detective lady, to Angela, and says, when she says, "Why are you at my house?" he says, "I was hoping you could help me solve the mystery of the horny beast." Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. Clearly, it's an innuendo. It's supposed to be an innuendo. If anything, I was half expecting a smash cut to them just having sex. I'm actually shocked that they continued to do investigation work, and then the nearly having sex that didn't happen till later. That happened in the motel room when she comes over. later on after her cats went missing. And that's when they almost, and she like pushes him out of the bed. Like he kind of tries to suggest not doing it, but she's like, no, we're doing this now. She's taking her clothes off. And then Scully walks in and says, oh, another murder has happened, which in this case is a teen girl who is the girlfriend of a boy that the two girls want to target, or they want for themselves, or whatever it may be. And the result here is that they're doing a whole Bloody Mary thing in the bathroom, and we don't see what happens to her. We see she gets trapped in there with them, but it seems to be that they have the glass shatter all in front of her and stab her to death with that, effectively. There's also a moment here where there's a girl with a Ouija board, and this stuck out to me because the one thing I kind of know about Ouija boards, at least from other movies and stuff, is that you're never supposed to do it on your own. It's always supposed to be at least two people holding the thingy at any given point. And she's just doing it on her own, and she's asking who she's going to marry, and it spells out Satan, and everyone's like freaking out. It doesn't really affect anything else or matter. I think, because up until this point in the episode, I was legitimately believing that the girls were the reason that the town was acting up as well. Like, the reason why everyone was acting crazy was because of them, and not the big astrology reason, which Mulder only gets that explanation when he pays via credit card for her to give the information. She refuses to offer this up until he pays for it. But she takes it all as complete fact. She flat out states things like, oh, if you were born in 1979 and you were born in this day, you're like trouble right now with all these planets in alignment. And the ending of this does seem to suggest that that's the case, because the girls seem to turn into really scared typical teenagers by the end, where they're just cowering in the room, crying, holding each other. And the angry mob sort of accepts that this must have just been Satan and it wasn't really the girls, even though they were ready to hunt the girls at that point in the episode. Yeah, I'm skipping over a couple things. One, they take the upset boyfriend of the girl that they just killed, and they try and basically seduce him, but he's like upset. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's like, what are you doing? I'm depressed here. Leave me alone. And the girls kind of fight a little bit and accidentally impale him with a spring from the garage door. And then they both accuse each other of being killers. Like, one goes to Scully and tells her that her friend's the killer. The other one phones Mulder and says that her friend's the killer. And then they both bring it to the police station. And I wasn't really sure what to make of this accusing each other thing. Like, it felt like, if they got a plan here, or are they actually turning on each other? It feels like they were actually turning on each other. Especially since when they both end up in the police station together, like, they're staring daggers at each other like, oh, all hell's about to break loose. And in fact, all hell does break loose. Everyone's guns start just going off, which honestly was a really cool visual. Like Scully's, like, everyone's holstered pistols all started firing at the ground. And it was like a good jump scare moment for all of them, because they're all like freaking out and like, what the hell's happening? And then like Mulder like pulls his out to hold it, and it still fires and it almost hits one of the cops. And then all the shotguns that are on a rack in the wall all start firing, and like it makes like a little explosion at the ceiling. Like, I actually really like this sequence. This was like probably the most fun the episode got, was just the absurdity of, like, I don't know, two telepathic girls having this weird like war in a police station, and it's just setting off every single person's gun. Is actually kind of the crazy wild scene that I think I was not necessarily expecting, because I don't know if I could ever expect this, but like, it was kind of, I guess, like the levels of fun that I was hoping the episode was going to be based on the crazy description. And that's not to say that I wasn't enjoying it for the most part, because I think I was. I think there's always a little bit of a double-edged sword, though, when the plot of your episode is to have your characters act out of character without there being either a good setup for it or a good resolution to it. And I think this episode was maybe missing that for that side of things, because, like I said, I never got the kind of the epilogue to them like sort of reflecting on all the bad things they said about each other. You know, Scully saying, why do you always have to drive? Is it because you're the big macho man? And then him saying, oh, I thought your little feet couldn't reach the pedal. Like, I would have liked some reflection upon that, and it's kind of frustrating when you slowly realise they're acting out a character, because I guess I maybe naturally worried that we're not going to get a good payoff to it, and we're just going to sweep it under the rug. Obviously, there's ways to do it that I think work really well. Like, I think if you have something that's a bit more, like a bit more intentional and a bit a clear cut. Like, there's a couple of great episodes of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example, where there's like a magic spell or something, early on, that you is definitively saying, oh, this has just changed everyone's personalities back to teenager or something like that, or it's changed everyone's personality to all be in love with this one character, and you kind of get the reason for it, and you can kind of like have fun with like the absurdity that comes out of it. Whereas because this was a bit more of like a, not that slow, but it was kind of like a slow reveal of like just a couple of snipey comments, and then you realize, wait, they're being extra snipey. This is like unlikable. I think they're out of character, and then it becomes clear, oh, they are out of character. Like, I don't know if I was having like a ton of fun with that. And I think part of the reason why I wasn't having a ton of fun with that is because I think it maybe didn't belong with the rest of the stuff in this episode. I think because of all the crazy stuff with the teenagers and what the crowd thought were satanic things going on, and all the crazy, you know, things happening with the guns and all the rest of it, I think I would have enjoyed all of that a bit more if Mulder and Scully were being themselves and were actually forced to react to it appropriately. But because everything was being reacted to through this filter of being bitchy towards each other, it meant I couldn't enjoy just their shock of various things happening. You know, like I couldn't enjoy their shock of some of the crime scenes they were being told about or finding or anything. Instead, we were focusing on just establishing the snippiness of each other instead of seeing how they actually play off and how Scully tries to give rationale to anything that she's seen or heard or believed or whatever. Because, you know, Scully's there when all these guns go off. She's one of the people whose gun just starts firing in her holster. It'd have been really nice to kind of, and obviously she looks shocked in the moment. I'm not saying you don't get any like reaction from her, but it would have been, I guess, more interesting to see her ponder, like, because Mulder does the little narration at the end where he's like writing his report or whatever, and he's talking about, oh, you know, we're on Earth going through space at 60-something thousand miles an hour, and we all take it for granted, and we never question if there's any effect on us, that these like forces that hold us all together, which is, I mean, it's gravity, right? It's just gravity that holds us in the sun's orbit. It's not that mysterious, to be honest. But regardless, I almost wish we got Scully's report instead. And it used to be always her. Like, it sometimes can be Mulder, but I feel like Scully trying to like make sense of this crazy happening in the town would be like normal Scully, like in character Scully. What does she make of all this, and what does she think was happening here? That seems more interesting to me than Mulder just instantly believing everything the astrologist said, or at least keeping an open mind instantly to it and just not really questioning it beyond that. He's like, oh, it's obviously just mysterious forces we can't explain. You know, so like I had fun with this episode. I mean, I don't want to sound too negative because I had a pretty good time. It's just that I feel like it could have been like, instead of just being pretty good, I think it could have been great if it was just either slightly lean more towards the crazy fun stuff and just have regular Mulder and Scully react to it, or we could have had the episode where they're acting so out of character we get kind of wailed with that, and then see them kind of have to like sort of reflect on it. I think I would have liked these two ideas separated out a little bit. And I think I was more interested when I thought the two girls were just evil kids. When I thought they were just evil witches, I thought that was more interesting than, oh, the alignment of these planets is just making them act evil. I think inherently that reveal was weird to me, and I just didn't like it, because it was like, oh, it's not actually their fault. They're just acting because of these forces. Well, I don't know. Like, I think for that, you'd have to focus on more of the effect of them having to live with remembering what they've done or something like that. But the way they're presented in the episode is just kind of fun, cheesy teenage, like, witch villains, effectively. And I was enjoying that for what it was. And then the end's like, nah, it's actually just this force of, you know, Uranus doing stuff. That was one of the, it was Uranus, Venus, and Mars. I think they were all in alignment with Earth or something like that. It happens once every 85 years, crazy stuff happening. I don't know if that's true, if they actually ever are all in alignment, but maybe they are, I don't know. Who's to say? Who's to say? But that, I mean, that was the episode pretty much. There's, you know, I think, yeah, maybe it's a little bit more weight on some of the other like things. Like, there's like a weird moment where when the angry mob goes to the pediatrician, who they suspect is the Satanist that's doing everything, or he's the killer that's killing all the teenagers. They do a little thing here when they get to his house. He comes downstairs in like a woman's bathrobe and he's got lipstick smeared all over his mouth. And I don't know if they're suggesting that he was kissing a woman or he's into some, you know, cross-dressing stuff. But it felt like, you know, very intentional. This is what they're doing. And then it didn't really play into anything other than just like he does have something to hide that he's scared about coming out. But to be honest, like Scully very quickly says, oh no, we checked the remains. It's a dog. Like he's off the hook. There's nothing wrong here. And it's like, oh, he's like, oh, thank God. And he leaves and we never see him again. But it felt like, oh, that felt like it was going somewhere. Like you know, maybe like we were going to start revealing that every like secret every townsfolk had for one reason or another, like because the mysterious forces are making them do that, or something, or maybe tying into this idea of people are acting out. Maybe he's acting differently than he normally does, or something. I don't know, but it never really became anything else. I would say. So I mean, I had a decent time. I don't want to sound too negative. It's just so much that I can see like greatness here, and I wanted to be into it more than I was. You know, like I wanted this to be like up to like I mean, it was never going to be like a genuinely great like episode, like a great episode is, but it could have been like a really great fun episode. And instead, it's a pretty good fun episode with some rough edges and some bits that don't quite. You know, I liked last week's more. I guess ultimately is what I'm saying. I think the craziness of last week's was a bit more consistently fun for me than this one was. So yes, that's that episode. Next week, we have an episode called Grotesque. Do I see an actor I recognize? I do. Kurtwood Smith's in the next episode. That's cool. Most people will probably think of That 70s Show when they think of him. I immediately go to RoboCop. I'm not a That 70s Show person, so he will always be the bad guy from RoboCop to me. But Grotesque, here's the description on IMDb. After a serial killer who claims to have killed people under the influence of a demon is arrested and murders continue, meanwhile, that was a weird sentence. Meanwhile, Mulder, who believes that the demon might have picked someone new, goes neck deep in the investigation. Okay, that sounds interesting. Serial killers, and it's a demon that's actually flipped from one person to the next to commit the murders. I can see a lot of good potential creepy horror movie moments from that. I can see a lot of skeptical Scully, you know, not believing that that first guy is technically innocent, but all the same, sounds like a potentially fun episode. So we'll see how that is next time. But that is me, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps out a bunch, of course. And you can also support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership or super chats or anything like that. All that is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?